The following material is copyright 2023 by Higher Alignment and Alignment Technologies. All reproduction and distribution are strictly prohibited without prior written consent. Welcome to Higher Alignment and the free intro class for our 12-week series, Mastering Motives, Learning to Connect at Choice Without Conditioning. Tonight we'll be discussing motives define behavior and connection, how the pursuit of lower motives produces contraction, limits joy and enthusiasm, and defines relationship boundaries, with Larry Byram, Tom Fagiano, and Sandy Jaquith.
Hello, everyone. I want to start by just saying that, we could have a negative version of motives because motives do fit and conform to our expectations in relationships. And if you have past experiences in relationships that are somewhat negative or hurtful, then yes, when we get in a relationship and it acknowledges a relationship, we start to apply those expectations to the relationship, and we start to make sure that we're getting what we need in advance of what we're giving to our partner. So we end up becoming more careful that we're not giving ourselves away. Would everybody understand that? Does that make sense, what I'm saying? And so a lot of times when we're talking about motives, we just don't really understand that it's about our state of being and how open and available we can be and how responsive we are with partners. And I would say that the way to get out of this whole thing is to be somewhat indifferent to our partners. Now, when I'm saying indifferent, I don't mean not be empathic. I'm saying indifferent, the fact that they have their own experience, they have their own way of operating, and that's helpful. It's helpful because that means that they have their autonomy, and their autonomy can help us to connect with them and learn new things from them. And so they enrich our lives. And that's very positive. Now, the guy on the picture here is really an example of what we call an implementer, or I've used to, for Andy's purpose, we used to call them warriors. And the objective of this type of person is just to show up, and they're really consistent, and they have the energy system set up so that they're fairly indifferent to what other people do because they're just going to keep doing what they do. And that is really beautiful in many situations, is that the people are persistently themselves and just honor the fact that if another person is having a bad day, doesn't mean they have to have a bad day. Anybody for that approach? We don't have to all fall into the toilet with people, or start digging holes with them because, oh, well, they're bringing us down. We'll commiserate with them. No, I'm saying to you, that kind of misery is not helpful, and it doesn't support the relationship. What we want to be able to do is give people hands up. And if you hold your higher sense of your motives, then you can give people hands up all day and not have it affect you. And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We're talking about the capacity to show up in an energetically positive and consistent way without doing any idealization, but by doing a sense of energetic management of people that really honors who we are and lets them choose how they can be the best they can be with us. Now, if you're positive, it's more likely they're going to want to meet you where you are. So that automatically creates a desire for them to uplift themselves. If they're not being positive and they're down, then you know that they're being compromised. They've been hurt, they're in trouble, and you want to moderate how close you get to them, or you want to moderate how much energy they take from you, because people with lower motives are always trying to accumulate other people's energy. That's how they feel better themselves. Everybody follow that so far? Anybody want to have questions? Just jump right in. We're really open here as a group, and there's no need to stand on any kind of.
I had a question, Larry.
Sure.
So, but the last thing you just said, I was thinking about positions versus motives. So, like, for example, if I have, a family member who I can just really witness, like this person has decided that they have anxiety and depression. Like that's just sort of like the place that they're operating from.
Yes.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they have, like that their motive is greed or lust or one of these things. But when I'm meeting them at that place, what I've realized, now that I've had my idealization bubble burst, is really like meeting that person. And when they express how they're feeling, to just meet them in that of like, I hear that's really tough for you, and just meet them there. But that seems separate than like the motive stuff. Can you just speak into that a little bit?
No, that is not separate. I'm going to say what it is. So it's a very good example, though, because what we're really saying is that there are 3 levels of personality development. You have the bottom level, where you were talking about greed and lust and arrogance, is the instinctive motives. And that level is mostly about attachments. And yes, they have severe inner imbalances between their own sensations and feelings, and they can't really be with you. But, in some ways, you can have compassion for them and hold space for them, but not without losing your own integrity. That's the key issue there. Now, the thing you mentioned with positions, that's more on what we call the personal level of development. And on that level, there's a lot of self-focus. And because we're having self-focus, we're trying to take care of ourselves, and we don't want to take care of anybody else. And so because of that, they're not going to be knowing how to contribute much to you anyway. And that's all positions there. Now, when you go beyond that to the projections, which are on the 3rd level, and that's when we're starting to open up the transpersonal part of us, then these people have much more capacity to engage you and meet you without any imbalance. The only imbalances you'll find there is emotional imbalances, and they're usually more temporary than long-term. And yes, they can sometimes be irritating. I agree with you. But in most cases, I want you to know that you have the capacity to use all these tools and be conscious about these tools so you don't take on their muck. And that stuff that they're doing, you can have compassion for. And you can make a choice on what to invest in and how to invest in it. And it could help them if you don't help them. You see, sometimes going down into the foxhole with them isn't the answer. Sometimes you have to give them a hand up and say, I know you're capable of doing this. Let's step up into this light. And you need to do this for yourself, not me doing it for you. And that's what we're here for. And when we do that, it puts people on notice that they're not just things, ideas, or I guess I want to say images of people. They are real people. And that really helps people to integrate and be more present with each other, is what we're looking for there. Okay? Did it answer your question, Divinity?
I love everything you just shared. I don't know that I have clarity on like how this is a motive thing. But maybe
Yes.
as the class unfolds, I will understand that more.
The 3rd slide.
Okay.
3rd slide.
Yeah.
But that's great that you brought that up, because what she's just done is she's brought up a real life example of, when you're in a relationship and you have to constantly be uplifting your partner. How many of you been in that situation where it gets old very quickly? When you're always having to make sure certain things don't trigger them. If you have that type of issue, well, I'm just going to say to you, it's problematic. It's difficult. It isn't a fun relationship. I want you guys to have fun relationships and creative relationships, not relationships that are based in a lot of struggle. And that's what we're really talking about here. Okay, let's move ahead here. Sandy, was there anything else we have to cover here? Okay.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, great. Sandy?
The problem of motives. Lower motives define our actions. In the honeymoon of any relationship, there is a blush of openness and abundance where we truly try to serve our partner. If we can make others happy by temporarily compromising ourselves, we usually try, even if it is codependent. Once the relationship is announced and formalized, we are often hurt when our partner no longer makes the effort to put us first. This triggers our conditioning, where we retaliate by withholding our support.
So the bottom line here is that when people initially connect up, they do a fairly good job in the honeymoon phase interacting. Why is that? It's because they don't have strong expectations about what to expect from the partner, and they're kind of surprised that the partner is responsive and showing up in a more open way. How many people have experienced that? Hopefully everybody here. Okay, the rest of you I'm going to assume that are just holding back right now. So moving on here, I just want to say to you that when you have a relationship where one person is holding back, it creates an imbalance in the relationship, ability to share yourself and ability. Some people start holding on to secrets. Some people start, and the secret really is what they want. Let me say this again. They want something from you that you're not providing them in their way automatically. And so they're trying to let you know they need something. So if you were to embrace the next higher step of whatever motive they're at and give them that and see how they respond to that, then you can start to identify, oh, this motive things really does make sense to you. You can actually use it as a ladder to uplift yourself and uplift your partner. And therefore, you can start to sustain the relationship in a regular way. Because what underlies motives is self-respect, self-esteem, and then self-love. So for the feminine part of motives, it's always self-respect. For the masculine type of motives, it's always self-esteem. And for the unified motives, it's always self-love issue. So you're always showing a person where you are, and the other person may not like where you are, and they're reacting to that and giving you back what they think their best response is. And their best response could be less than what you're offering. Why? Because they want to make you pay attention to them. That's all it is. Three things they want is they want you to pay attention to them, they want you to acknowledge them, or they want you to accept them in some way, which you're not currently doing. Those are the three levels. Okay, Sandy.
We evaluate our needs and determine how we will act, cutting off higher personal and creative contributions that take effort. What is left is instinctive sexual relationships, status quo contracts, and over-idealized promises of partnership that are never delivered.
So how many of you have been in a relationship that you just felt that over time you had an agreement with the person didn't live up to the agreement, and you felt trashed by that experience? And every time you look at the person, you say, I don't know why I'm with this person, because they haven't really committed or followed through on anything they've said they were going to do. Anybody been in that situation? Okay. That's an indication that we're not communicating our motives. We're not communicating what's really going on with us and where we're at. And I admit, we don't necessarily want to feel bad about ourselves. And we don't want to admit what hurts us. Does that make sense? We don't want to admit that we're vulnerable. But I'm going to say to you, if your partner doesn't know you're vulnerable, you're leaving a lot of strength on the table and you're not taking advantage of the growth opportunities in the relationship for yourself. I'm saying you are not growing in the capacity you could be by if you were vulnerable. And we're going to talk about the value of that in the class. We'll talk much more about that. Okay. Go ahead.
Motives are the energetic underbelly of conditional responses to, quote, I only give when I can get.
So it's a conditional framework of living in relationships and only affects the first three levels of relationships. It doesn't affect the intuitive level at all. Okay.
Unconscious motives are hidden to those individuals who have the same or lower motives.
Yeah. So by the way, the fact that you're unconscious about motives is not unusual because it takes people a long time to start recognizing the actual impact of motives because this isn't taught anywhere. I wish it was, but I mean, talking about in universities and things like that, it should be. But if people understood motives, they would understand how to build their relationships in more congruent ways, in more effective ways. And they would be able to build co-creative relationships, not just codependent relationships. Okay.
Conscious motives are misunderstood by individuals doing unconscious motives.
Yep.
When our motives align with partners, it is easy to work with them.
So the whole goal is to have more common motives because then you work in alignment with each other and what you both do can be synergistic. That's what we're saying. Okay.
Larry.
Yeah.
How do motives line up with worldview?
Good question. Motives are, I guess I would say, a more operational view of a connection between people. And if you think about it, higher worldview people are always taking the higher motives and trying to use higher motives to uplift the partners they're with. So it's a scaled down version that's made operational, okay, of the higher level worldview. What Divinity was asking there was worldview. We have a framework for consciousness that deals with 7 stages and 7 levels in each stage. And it relationships are right in the middle. And in this group here, we serve 4th level relationship to 4th level inner success. That's our group, and that's the group we work with. And that's the group that responds to what we do. If you have people lower than that, they don't know how to follow the material that we have. And if we have people higher than that, then all they're learning is a vocabulary for what they already do. So that's kind of how it works out. Okay. Sandy?
What are motives? Motives are anchors that indicate what we believe we need and how we think we will find fulfillment. Motives become ways to initiate interactions with others that are preset strategies to get what we want.
So just to let you know, you look at this chart. On the bottom level, it's on the instinctive modes, it's greed, lust, and arrogance. On the second level, it's personal dominion, self-serving activity, and personal achievement. On idealized modes, it's idealized trust, idealized co-creation, idealized unity. Intuitive modes, it's universal dominion, conscious participation, and mutual accomplishment. Now, if you notice energetically, it's more participative and it's more equal on the top level. In the lower levels, it is more out of balance and there's more conflict going on, both within the people and with with the relationships they're with. So there's more of a game playing going on at the lower levels. And there's less game playing going on the top levels because all they want to do is find ways to work better together. Yes, Pat.
Okay. Am I the only one that doesn't understand, for instance, what universal dominion and
No, I haven't gotten to that, Pat. I will say to you that universal dominion is the consciousness of the space of honoring yourself fully, so that when other people are around, you can see them fully and engage them.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. We'll get to
No, by the way, I appreciate your comment there. You know, mutual accomplishment is the ability to be operating in a team situation in a state of mutual joy at the action you're doing together or the progress you're making together, and that you've really, you know, you're a good team. And conscious participation means that we're able to plan and engage each other in a way that is co-measured and co-creative. Okay, so just to give you the top level. But now I'm going to go back to Divinity's question. Divinity's question is, you know, she doesn't know what greed, lust, and arrogance really is. And are people doing greed, lust, and arrogance? And I'm going to say, Divinity, a lot of people don't even know they're doing greed, lust, and arrogance, and they are. Okay? And it isn't meant as a bad thing because they actually need the greed, lust, and arrogance to survive because they're on a survival level. You know, I'm not it's not a judgment. It's just an operational situation. That's where they are. And then the next step up, personal dominion, personal achievement, and self-serving activity. Those are people that are trying to build their personality and focus on what they need because they don't know how to show up in a society as fully functioning members in that society. Now, people evolve beyond that into the idealized level. That's where it gets tricky. Why? Because some people don't know what idealized trust is. That's when you are always giving yourself away by trusting others when they don't deserve the trust you give them. Anybody been in that situation? Or idealized unity is when you trust what other people say over your own truth. Anybody been there? Could be a problem. And then idealized co-creation is when you think that you can just let things work out, and yet you have no responsibility for being 100% committed to it, and therefore it's not being guided. It's just on a wing and a prayer, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But wing and a prayer approaches to life are hopeful, but they don't actually get you anywhere. Does that resonate with anyone?
Larry, quick question. In order to get to level 4, does it mean that everyone must pass through all the other levels? Is it like
That's a good question. It's a hold-on structure. You know, Ken Wilber talks about hold-ons. So you have to have experienced greed to get to personal dominion, to get to idealized trust, to get to universal dominion. So it's a hold-on structure. But every step of that process means that you get more I guess abundant is the best way to say it. In that particular one, it's abundant in your spatial understanding of yourself. Because the feminine side is always about holding space and creating possibilities when there are none. Okay? Now, the masculine side is always about incremental mastery of tools and techniques to get us somewhere. So if you look at it that way, arrogance, personal achievement, idealized unity, and mutual accomplishment are all working toward being better team people. You know, that's what the goal is. Now, the middle column is really lust, is where we're disconnected completely for ourselves and we're just acting out animalistic urges, right? And then self-serving activity is now we're identifying that we have personal needs, and then we're identifying with co-creation. Oh, we have needs and we have desires to go somewhere and do something with other people. And we don't even know what that is, but sometimes people could think that just to have great companionship. And then conscious participation is no, we know where we are, we know who we are, we know how we're going to show up together. And therefore it becomes easy to be related to each other. Okay, does that make sense? So I just abbreviated your process, Sandy, so you can go to the end.
Okay, we grow from the bottom up consciously with each level of embodiment.
Yeah, so here's the next part of Divinity's question. So everybody starts off at the bottom and has to build their own capacity in each level to show up with others. And as they do that, it doesn't mean they're firm in that level. It just means that they're ranging in a level. So when people have bad days, they, let's say that they're in their best day, they do idolize trust. Well, in their worst day, they're doing personal dominion. Or let's say that when in their best day, they're doing idolized unity, and in their worst day, they're doing personal achievement. It can range up and down, and people can be in multiple columns simultaneously if they're embodying their masculine and feminine both. Now, I just wanted to let you know, there are a lot of people in lower levels of consciousness that are only doing one side. They're either doing the masculine side or the feminine side, and they just want to stay there. But our consciousness is both masculine and feminine. It is only on the gender level that we're only masculine or feminine. But on the other levels of our being, both in defenses and in creativity, it's all distinguished. Your masculine and feminine are all distinguished independently of your gender. So it doesn't matter that, you think you're more masculine or you think you're more feminine. It really shows up in terms of who you are as a creative being, which is much bigger than that. Okay? Cool. Okay.
Again, may
Yeah.
I?
Go
So-
ahead.
All of this that you're talking about tonight is not only with romantic relationships or anything, it's any kind of relationship that we have, from parenting to a friend, right?
To business people. I look at motives in organizations and I know right away where that organization is and what's possible for that organization. Some higher levels of motives will never be accepted there,
Right. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
you can look at these as self-generated obstacles a lot of times, because people are scared of extending themselves or putting themselves in a vulnerable position. But if you don't put yourself in vulnerable positions, you don't grow. So there's the downside of the problem. Okay. So I just want you to take that in a little bit and start to imagine. Okay, Larry says there are 12 motives. And Larry says that the lower three levels are more our development process and our personalities. And yes, sometimes we pay attention to the lower ones, and sometimes we pay attention to the higher ones. I just want you to be choosing where you want to be and be okay with where you be without any judgment. You see, this isn't a judgment system. If you really were conscious of being in lust, you wouldn't be in lust long. You'd be becoming alive, and you know how to connect to people more. That would be an obvious thing. Now, I'm just saying, the outer facade of a motive may get us into action on some level, that if we clear that issue, it automatically jumps us up and we become more capable of seeing where other people are at and seeing where we're at. And that's what I'm really advocating here.
Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
Are you going to address how wounding, parental childhood wounding guides or prevents mobility through this chart?
I could do that. I have a little bit of that in the class. I can give you some basics. Hi, Suzanne. Nice seeing you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. So,
But you don't have to do it today. I just was curious if that's part of the.
oh yeah. You know, um, like a father could think it's his duty to really focus on personal achievement with a son, maybe, and therefore he's trying to set him up in a positive way for his advancement. Now, the problem is that may be too much pressure or not the right place for that child to be operating at in the natural evolution of what that child's own design is. And that would be in conflict. So an example would be with you. You know what I do? I always use the people who show up here as examples. So in your case, Andy, you needed more flexibility in the way you grew up. You had to incorporate, even though externally you did a lot of the masculine side and you paid a lot of lip service to it, you had to be paying attention to the feminine side too, because trust is a big issue for you. It was always a big issue for you. And if you didn't trust somebody and they didn't trust you and you didn't see evidence of it, it was hard for you to stay in this situation. I'm just using that as an example. And I think that was formed by your parents and by the example they went through. You see, that's what I would say. Now, you happen to marry a person who had a tremendous amount of trust, thank goodness. And so it didn't turn out to be a problem for you. But, it's interesting to see how we match up with other people that try to bring us out in other ways and make us more richer human beings. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So I'm going to jump through some of these next slides fairly quickly because I'm not here to make this all completely understood, because it takes a while for people to apply this work. It's not something that you do in a night. It's something you do over 12 weeks, and then you become familiar and at ease with it, and you see where you're showing up and where you're not showing up with people, and you start to reflect on why that would be. What would be the obstacle with me that I don't have anybody showing up in the way I want? And what would be the opportunity to turn that around? And so what we're doing is giving you prescriptions on what you can do to improve the relationships you're in so that you're always getting what you want. Now, that would be sad completely if you're completely getting it. I don't want to encourage you to think that you can get everything you want, but I want you to know that you can have somebody with you participating in the process, doing something that would be uplifting and helpful to you. That would be really good. So I just want to make some notes. If you look at the lower instinctive motives, they are primarily selfish because the person doesn't have a complete sense of what their possibilities are. And they're also looking for possessions. They're looking for other people to possess as a thing, as arm candy, things like that. They want relationships that mean that they are more powerful and complete, even though because they don't feel that way. They don't feel that way inside themselves, so they need that external support. Anybody notice that in the world? The people that need more support are the people that are the most insecure. Okay. I'm going to throw that out. You can think about that. So I'm going to jump ahead here. I will talk about this one. Sandy?
Pre-personal development, level 1 instinctive motives.
By the way, pre-personal is another term that Ken Wilber uses, and that means that it's the animal instinct that really isn't organized very well, and we just react out of misguided sense that we're always under threat. Now, half the time we're not under threat, but we can't distinguish the times when we are from when we're not. So we're planning to act out those things, to operate in those ways, even if it wasn't a problem. And other people, they can look at it and say, wow, that person's jealous. I'm good because I'm affecting them. And they might like having their partner jealous and things like that, because that means they have some influence over them, right? That's the real value of that. But it's not really valuable in terms of their well-being long-term, because over time, they're going to be worn down much quicker, and they'll have less and less awareness of the circumstances they're in just because they're focused the way they are. And so they will miss more and more of the threats. And that makes them more susceptible to be, picked upon by the universe. Okay. I'm kind of joking, but not completely there. Sandy?
Level 1 instinctive motives. We see only our physical reality and define ourselves and others as objects to be manipulated. We lose ourselves in our self-image, greed, lust, and arrogance, falsely believing we have to advertise our needs to guarantee getting what we want. This belief originates from the experience of scarcity. When locked in instinctive motives, we only see what we fear as an obstacle to getting what we want. The more we define ourselves by our outward facades and pretenses, the more we cover up our true creative nature. Instinctive motives encourage the forceful imposition of our needs upon others.
Great. So the reason I gave you this piece of information is I wanted you to have a way of looking at these pictures. Now, I'm giving you a bunch of people that have incredibly instinctive motives. And I've labeled them. So L1 just means that they're on the instinctive level. That's all that means. And I've labeled them greed. The second one's greed. Third one's arrogance. Fourth one's arrogance. Then down below, I start to give you combinations: lust and arrogance, and lust, which means all of them, and lust and greed. So you can start to see when you have people locked into these patterns, they are vacant in certain ways energetically. They're vacant in their consciousness. And of course, they can't see this, but other people who have consciousness can see this. So I want you to notice how these people, you can't see into them. You have no relationship to them because they don't have a relationship to themselves. They're just operating from certain impulses, and they're not coherent even. And so when you look at this group, you start to see, oh my gosh, they're not flexible. They don't actually know how to show up with you. Dana?
Yeah, is there any correlation between their defensive structures, if it's more masculine or feminine, which path they take with motives?
Well, I just want to say the correlation I'd have to do with instinctive motives is distant.
Ah, okay.
Because they're not at a level that you even see differentiation of defenses. If you look on the intellectual level, you start seeing differentiation in defensiveness. And then you start seeing which side, the masculine side or the feminine side, they're choosing. At this level, you don't really see any differentiation in masculine and feminine perceptions. They may have beliefs or expectations that they should operate differently, but it's not observable from the outside.
Okay, because it definitely looks like a lot of them are role playing. And
all role playing. Everybody is role playing when they're on the instinctive level. That's all they know. Okay, so that was a good hit. Divinity?
Well, my question is actually about the pretenses. Would you say all these people are seducers?
No,
or is that something totally separate?
the ones in lust are pretty much seducers, I'll tell you that. The ones in greed could be in certain situations. The ones in arrogance are not so much seducers, they're subjectifiers. Okay, so you got to watch that. Any other questions? Okay. Cool. So I just want to throw this at you because I want you to start seeing that this is an operational thing that's useful in your life. If you identify where people are operating their motives, you know whether or not you should spend time with them or engage them, or what would be the value of it. You ask the question, what would be the value? And I would have to say, no, not a high level of interaction here. Problematic in many ways. Okay. Sandy?
Intellectual motives, solitary performance affirmations. On the intellectual level, we differentiate ourselves by what we do well and assume responsibility for making things better. Unfortunately, the only way we know how to do this is by ourselves. This leads to greater independence of action and an expectation that our partner should just do our thing. As a result, there is greater disharmony when a partner is not happy with the way things are being done. It promotes adversity, negotiation, and intensity as unconscious competition becomes more conscious. Personal dominion, personal achievement, and self-serving activity become their own justifications for letting individuals do what they want to do when they want to do it.
Okay, so just to tell you what personal dominion is personal dominion is I need to have a place that is I call my own. Some people think of it as a home. So the woman, usually in nesting and everything else, she's just trying to create a space for herself. And this can apply to men too, because they take offices in the corner building in large organizations, and that's an expression of personal dominion. It's assuming that your space represent who you are, what recognition you deserve, what status you're purveying to other or conveying to other people. Okay. Second one is personal achievement is more like how much you're paid, because if you're paid big bucks, then you must be worth big bucks. And so there's an association in people's mind that the higher your pay, the more valuable you are. And that's what these people are looking for, is they're looking to achieve relative to others. That's why competition is the big thing here. Now, self-serving activity is an activity where you are in more control of what you want to do, and you don't have to define yourself in terms of others. Now, I'm going to give you a lot of examples. Some people would say, binge watching, some shows would be personal dominion. Self-serving activity, because they're just doing it on themselves. They don't have to interact with everybody else. They can recover their own balance in themselves. But you can have also going to a baseball game, something like that. They could go there. They can even go there with friends, but the friends all conform to their expectational understanding, and they do the same basic things with each other all the time. And so there's nothing new they have to deal with in those events. And so really, it's just their opportunity to go and be alone and have some gracious connection, maybe, but really run their own show. Now, the other thing I'm going to say here is that independence is not autonomy. So people here may prove that they're independent, and being independent means they have more choices. And that's what really is why they're trying to do what they're doing. They want to show other people that their choices are greater than and not limited as much as other people's choices. But autonomy is when you make the decision, I'm going to make my own choice despite whatever the adversity is around me, because I have a higher purpose or a reason to do it this way that is going to ultimately satisfy more people or be a bigger deal. Now, a lot of people in personal achievement are not doing that level of embodiment. They're trying to, but they have to mature more before they get there. They have to find their authentic life expression and know what that is before they can get there. A lot of people are just doing jobs that they can get paid for that allow them to have the lifestyles they want. Questions? Okay, Sandy.
Their lack of unity or common purpose becomes quite apparent, leading to bigger institutionalized arguments. We seek agreement, but experience none.
Well, what they want really is other people to agree with them. And this can get fairly monotonous when one partner is dominating another partner and the other partner just accepts whatever they say, but really doesn't take it in or do anything different. Anybody notice that? Yeah. So, basically, we would say that is the road to a subjectification experience, but I don't want to get into explaining that. But it's about control. Some people want to be in control of others, and they think that's their way to freedom, or they think that's their way to something bigger for them, and it can be, but it doesn't necessarily always line up that way. Okay. So I don't think we need to go into this, but there's a statement here that says competition, productivity, and negotiation become the primary ways we express ourselves. So that's one of the giveaways in terms of looking at people with a lot of individuation requirements. So when you look at them, you'll see a degree of they're in for themselves, and they have more shark eyes. Anybody know what a shark eye looks like? It looks like it's staring you down, and you basically, it's not going to blink. So, it's waiting for you to blink. That's what shark eyes look like. Now, there are some seductive shark people. I just want to say that, like the self-centered person on the bottom, she's doing seduction. She's doing less of the shark eye, and she's doing more of the seduction. So she has a shark eye, but she wants to do it in her way, and she wants to draw other people toward her. Whereas a lot of the other people are really setting up more adversity with other people. They're really pushing people away. And so when you look at intellectual motives, it's more like get out of my space, or give me my space. I'm claiming my space. Come close to me. There is that kind of energy behind it. Anybody have any questions about how to recognize this type? So we have.
Is there a big crossover with outer success with this?
Yes,
level?
it totally crossover. So the last level, there was crossovers between, basically safety and security and very early inner success. Now, this is more
Outer success.
outer success, yes, very early outer success. This is more mid-level to late level outer success. Okay. Well, she's asking about worldviews right now. Okay. So let me just say this. This woman is a good example of personal dominion. She hasn't even established her own boundaries, but she knows what she wants. She has a vision inside of what she wants. She wants a certain set of things. They could be a relationship. They could be a house. They could be things like that. That would be a perfect example of personal dominion. Chris?
So I'm putting this together. The last place I worked, it was me and one other guy. And at one point he looked at me and said, "You're really competitive." And I thought, wow, I don't feel competitive, but I'm thinking he was here and projecting that on me. And because I have a warrior secondary who likes to improve things, I was doing my own internal process. But
exactly, he was thinking that your warrior was your secondary, and therefore you are, and you could be competitive in his mind.
Right.
It could be a projection as well, because you would think that you're trying to be cooperative.
Right.
But unfortunately, the way he could interpret you would be the opposite.
Right. So I hadn't seen that about all the motives before, that we can also project where we are onto other people that might have nothing to do with where we are.
In fact, that's why I tell people you shouldn't worry what other people think. It's mostly bullshit. What people think about you is not clear, or most of the time not on track. Why? Because they're putting their own spin on how they interpret you, and it's usually off balance. And if it's off balance in those ways, and you take it on, then you start reacting with the imbalances they have. And you start making what they said true. And I don't want you to do that, because now you're enmeshed in a codependent pattern, and that's never going to be a happy ending. Okay? No happy endings on that one. Okay. Any questions here? The woman C is a really good example of personal achievement. Very direct. She happens to be a visionary with an implementer secondary, so you really can see the contrast. She doesn't really care about what other people think. She cares about what she's trying to do, and if you're aligned to it, great. If you're not aligned to it, get out of the way. And then you can see people down below here who have a little bit more seduction, like the G person down here. He has some seduction, and the E person has some seduction as well. So if you look at the top row, it's more the purist, and you look at the bottom row, it's more the combinations. And when you have combinations, especially on the second level, it could lead to seduction. So in case you haven't figured it out, seduction isn't a good thing necessarily, because what's happening is these people they want to undermine your sense of self, and they want to undermine your self-respect and your self-esteem, so they can install their own process with you, and that you have to defer to them and make them the leader in the situation. And so what they want is they want to be given access to you, and if you give yourself away, you fall into their trap. Okay. Any other questions there? By the way, it's really interesting when you start seeing this, because you'll start seeing that people are doing motives a lot of places that you didn't imagine they were doing motives. And I always think about motives is they're trying to ask for something. They want something from you, and they don't even know all the time what that is. But if you go ahead and give it to them, guess what? They're like startled. They start waking up to the fact that you seem to know more about them than them, which is a useful thing sometimes. If you want to, especially when these people are very controlling, you want to throw them off their control game, just give them the control and then throw them all the lines and say, yeah, you're going to do all this. I'm really glad you stepped up, and it's so good that you're going to do these things. And then to see what they do. That'd be more fun. Have you ever had fun like that? Okay. So moving ahead. So idealized motives, Sandy.
Idealized motives, when good turns bad. Projections on partners about how they should meet our expectations and desires can become a major problem when working together. This occurs when the ideals we have become more important than the process being used to engage each other. Idealized motives distract us from establishing a creative flow and aligning with our partner in a way that works for us both.
So if you're still interacting and there's something off about how you're interacting, then there's probably some idealized motive imbalances in this. There's expectations that you have that you don't know you have, or you haven't expressed to yourself, which your partner needs to know. That's how you disarm yourself in this situation.
Instead, we end up blaming each other when our goals or intentions get thwarted. Most importantly, we cannot see that we are not aligned in our process, which creates a hidden conflict about how to accomplish our goals.
Because we can't decide the way to do it. It's always a fight over how we're going to do it, not what we want. You can always think you want things. The question is, you have to bring it into your hearts in the moment, and you have to experience what it is, and then talk to each other about how that experience moves you. And then you've got to be aligned in that direction or that vision together, so that you can actually figure out how are you going to implement it together.
This unconsciously motivates us to sabotage the process when our partners become too full of themselves or are self-important.
So what
Is-
happens is that people become complacent when they reach a certain level of success, that they don't think they need to calibrate to others. And that leads to what I consider to be a real imbalance, because the self-importance becomes an unwillingness to be present to the other partner and to be moved by the other partner, or to be influenced by the other partner, or to be vulnerable to the other partner. Again, all those things.
We sometimes even consciously want our partner to get a reality check by failing so they can see their projections.
Yeah. So we're going to move ahead here very quickly. And by the way, I should mention that this level is where we start developing a transpersonal desire to integrate with others. And that means doing that without losing our autonomy. That's the most important thing I could tell you with that. But transpersonal means that we have to actually get in sync with them, and we have to understand them enough to do that. And a lot of people don't know how to unpack that. And that's why they're feeling stuck in this situation a lot. Most of the clients that I have, and we're attracted to this work, are working on this level, the third level here. And it's challenging for them because they're not seeing a way out. And if you're not seeing a way out, it just means you haven't pierced your own consciousness veil, and you're not looking at yourself from a higher viewpoint and seeing what you're doing individually and being able to appreciate what you're doing for yourself and what you're not doing for yourself. If you could see that, and then what happens is you can then change the dynamic a lot. But if you keep trying to change the other partner as a way of changing yourself, it's not going to work. And if you keep trying to change yourself and you don't know what's happening, it's because you're not open to the partner giving you insight to yourself. Because the real value of having a partner is that they give a reflection back of you, and it can help you to understand yourself in a whole new way. Okay. Questions of that? So if you start noticing these people, there's more presence. They could remind you of the people in the group here. Why? Because they're more radiating a sense of goodwill, and they're more wanting things to work out. Now, is that always easy for them? No, because it's idolized. Let me just talk about that. We just went through a class, as Divinity talked about, dealing with idolization. And idolization is definitely a deep and intrusive force in our world. We want to believe in certain things, and we construct our personalities around that. And we don't really check in to see if there are things that we want that are different than what society has told us we want. And so we have to separate out that stuff that is imposed on us, and we have to find out what's really true for us. Now, in these situations, all these ideals are more society's ideals imposed on us. So when you look at the first person, you can see she's in a fairly advanced state of embodiment of her feminine. She is being present to herself, which is beautiful, but she still is limited by her desire to trust others more than is appropriate. Now, what does that look like? It looks like giving herself away in situations where it doesn't really pay off to do that. Anybody been in situations where you invested so much more in a relationship and you kept hoping it was going to turn around and it never did? Anybody been in that? Yes. Okay. And if you look at the guy, he's another example of idealized trust. He really wants to trust you. I mean, he's going to do anything to trust you. And that's a challenge, because what we want to do is be more conscious. That means we have to be able to assess our trust of ourselves and our trust of our partners, and only trust our others to the degree we first trust ourselves. That is the key. If you're trusting others outside of the balance of that, there is no reality to it. And then we have idealized unity. These guys are really enamored by their own thoughts, and they're caught up in their thoughts are the greatest. And it's not that they're not great. I'm not making any comment about the content, but their belief about them being great makes it harder for other people to take on those thoughts, or those thoughts to be shared, or that there to be feedback in a growth way. The woman here in D is also an example of idealized unity. She's got a really, you can see this because they're really centered in themselves. And they're really using their minds to create their vision of themselves. And that is a giveaway for idealized unity. Now, idealized co-creation is that they're trying to figure out how to bring other people into their space, but they have a lot of codependent issues still. Yeah, Ty. Ty, we can't hear you.
Okay, thanks. I was just struck by we shouldn't trust others more than we trust ourselves. I'm wondering if you could give an example of when we trust ourselves more. Like, it seems like very common in society that we should just trust other people, just trust. Is there an example where we actually trust ourselves more
Yeah, let's just talk about that. So what are we trusting when we're trusting ourselves? We're trusting our own knowing, and we're trusting our own creativity, and we're trusting our capacity to be intuitively tuned into a thing. Okay? So have you ever been in situations where you intuitively knew this wasn't a good idea, but you trusted anyway? That's an example of you believing in your own trust in an exalted way, in a self-important way, in fact, and not letting yourself take that in because you had to act out to benefit the other person, because what would they think of you otherwise? You know, it's like you're letting other people's definition of you define what you're going to do. Did that make sense? Because that's the real rub there. The rub is other people convince us that, oh, yes, they're very trustworthy, all these things. But if you don't feel it in your heart, then I wouldn't say yes. Okay.
Yeah, so then we go with our gut, we go with our intuition instead of
and go with your knowing. There's a knowing that we have that's a higher knowing, not just our personality knowing, but a higher knowing that is pretty much dead on. You know, you know where every risk is. And if you just listen to that voice, you know every risk that you're taking. And what I'm encouraging people to do is take effective risk. I don't want you to slow down, but I want you to know where you're taking your risk. And I want you to minimize the downsides and maximize the upsides so that the risk you take have a good payoff for you. And it's because you're investing in the right people that have potential rather than the people that don't have any potential or are closed down. That would be a big issue. Okay.
Larry, I'd like to speak to Ty's question a little bit, because I'm looking at it from a little bit different perspective of how we often, even both we ourselves have mixed motives. So, you know, like those times when somebody asks you to go do something and you go, sure, I'd love to do that. But underneath it, you have the other party that goes, well, I don't really want to go out and do that. And so then you have to figure out between what you said you wanted to do and what you really want to do, what you think you should do and what you feel like you should do. That's part of the trust issue, is trusting ourselves to really know our truth and what we are really going to show up for. And then to figure out how when other people are going to do that as well. So that's just my take on it.
By the way, the mixed motive thing is a great discussion there. Anybody else? And if you notice the guys on the lower one are people that a lot of you go, well, they're good people, I trust them, they want to make it work. Now, I'm not saying they don't want to make it work. I'm just saying they may have blockages to doing it with anyone else. Now, this is a hard one because a lot of the people in the group here still have that blockage. If you can't differentiate when people are in idealized co-creation and when they're not, then you're going to be susceptible to believing that. Now, just recently, I had some examples of people suggest, oh, I want to make this my business partner. I'm going, well, the three options you gave me are all idealized, co-creation, and they're all equally disconnected. So do you want to actually struggle with one of those? Is that really when I would go back to the drawing boards and find a little bit higher worldview, and wait for the right person to show up rather than just pick somebody out of a hat, or out of a belief that, oh my gosh, I hope they make it, I hope they can do it, that's a problem. Okay. Yes, Dana.
Yeah, is there a way that, I don't know, people can be with the bigger truth, or I don't know. I don't think they can skip this stuff, but I don't know.
No, here's what you do. I haven't told you the particulars of how you elevate people so they get out of something. You always go to the step above the previous blockage, and you hold space from that place.
Okay.
You see if they can move up and meet you, and they can start to open up about that, whatever the blockage is that they're talking through or are dealing with. Now, another thing you can do is this is not going to change the consciousness, but it can change the effectiveness sometimes, is you can move from the masculine side to the feminine side and see if they have more power over there.
Okay.
And that's the other direction. And there's a value in that because sometimes they're more empowered in one side than another side. And if you can connect to them there, then you can bring back connection to the area that is in question and deal with it.
It's almost like we make it safe for them to go where they avoid going.
Because you're holding that space.
Yes,
and
exactly.
and they're going, oh, I see how I can do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Some people, what we have here is usually an upper boundary limit. And we have a maybe we grew up in a family that didn't have any higher motives. I know I did. The highest motives my family had was intellectual motives. That was the most they could do, And the two kids that I got to at a young age, and I brought them under my umbrella and helped them go to school and stuff. The two younger ones have worldviews now. They're all intuitive, but the problem is that the other ones I didn't get to because I wasn't old enough to be able to get to them. They're still down there with my parents' level of
yeah.
Okay. Did that make sense, everyone? Okay, so that's one way you can personalize it. Okay, Sandy.
Higher motives are open. Intuitive motives are transpersonal. The upside of higher motives is that we learn how to participate and bring out the best in each other. Openness, mutual discovery, and learning have a positive impact because we grow accustomed to sharing our perspectives and do not hide anything. With lower level motives, there is always secrecy because of self-interest and personal compromise. When we do not compromise, we can share ourselves openly, and our actions speak as loudly as our words.
If you notice, people that can't do what they say they're going to do have motives conflict. So have you ever met people who said, wow, they talk a good game, but they never deliver? They have internal motives conflicts. They can't live up to their words. That's really what's going on there. Okay.
Trust is built in. We do what we say and operate in an aligned manner. When we share ourselves and our motives, we allow the best possibilities to emerge so there is mutual agreement about a course of action. In this way, the relationship is always getting better, and we learn how to anticipate our partner's needs so they are always considered in our decision-making process.
Okay, so you can see from this diagram that we're trying to have you take ownership of the high ground so that you have the awareness of these motives and you can apply them in ways that would help you. You always have to apply them from the top down, not from the bottom up. You can't get anybody to uplift their motives by meeting them in the motive they're at. If you you're just reinforcing it. And if you meet them at lower motives, they'll fall right with you and go to lower motives, no problem. In fact, they'll think, oh, now I must have more consciousness or more awareness than the other person, because they wouldn't go that low. And because people even have reputations to try to protect, and they don't want to be seen in the lower motives because that means that they're more desperate than other people might think they are. And they don't want to show their desperation. Okay. So,
hey, Larry, you want to take a break?
I was going to take a break, but I was just going to wonder if I could just show the pictures and then we can go on break. So, if you look at these people, there's more presence in themselves. It isn't about the outer looks of them. It's just about their availability internally. So when you're looking at them, you notice that there's an internal space. There's more consciousness available, and there is more reflection available. Now, I grant you, there's some people like on E, he's got a little bit of a facade a lot of facade that's in the way. But he is one that had a lot of different things going on there. And I wanted to show you a mixed guy that is a little bit confused, but at least his flexibility is there. Because he can show up in different motives fairly well, but the problem is he doesn't combine his motives with other motives. Now, so let me just say that to you. When you get more conscious, you can start mixing and matching what motives you're holding. Isn't that fun? And when you have that mixed motive thing, that means you meet more people and you can attract better people to you. Some people like the guy in E, he's specialized in doing one motive at a time. And so he's not as open as the rest, but he's able to track where people are, and he's able to put the motive in the right time in the right place, which puts him in this category. Okay. So I think that's enough. Let's take a break. Okay. Everybody take a break. Okay. We're back. And we just looked at some pictures here and started to see that people that aren't glaring at you, people that aren't positioning themselves to be in charge over you, people that aren't trying to meet you and try to be with you, those are the idealized people. So if you think about it, these various categories are really just telling you what their motives are. Now, I just want to make sure you understand that people's motives can shift based on how they're showing up with any particular person. So you aren't holding your motives in a uniform way across all your connections. You're doing various motives in various connections based on the status of that relationship and how you feel about that relationship. So it tells you kind of what's going on, in that way. So, any questions about that? Okay, so we're going to move ahead here we're going to do a little thing on motives here. So we're going to do what we call a guided imagery process. And I'm just going to take you into a place where you can start to integrate this and think about it on a deeper level. And it's going to give you a chance to bring up a relationship from your past and just start thinking through where you were with that person and how that has worked for you. So for the people that are not familiar with this, we just turn off the screens for this part of it, and we just let things flow, get comfortable in your location, and we'll just start. And I want to start by having you take a deep breath and center in yourself. And then release that breath fully. Tune into your heart and remember a time when you've just met a person where the connection is mutually enthusiastic and joyful. Just feel the abundance and desire you had for the relationship, or perhaps still have. You might recognize the motives of universal dominion, where there's a spaciousness and a flow that really comes through in the relationship, and a permission to do anything that may benefit the relationship. Or you may notice that you had a real ability to complement each other and to work together in some way. And you may have great conversations that elevated your thinking process. And just notice how much of this you had or have in this relationship. And now I'm going to ask you to explore how this relationship may have changed over time. Did it become defined by your sexual attractions? Or was it primarily for intellectual stimulation? Or did you resonate with the fact that this person appeared to have the same aspirations and dreams? If any of these three became the focus of the relationship, then the motives became instinctive, intellectual, or idealized exchanges of desire. Just give yourself a moment to assess how motives may have shaped this relationship. Some of you might find this difficult because they all influenced you, perhaps at different times or even together. It is common for us to have mixed motives when our desires migrate, or perhaps even are not clear or compromised. And you can notice that when lower motives reinforce a sense of constriction, selfishness, and animal desire. And this is because motives, when you feel into them, have turbulent distortions between our fears and desires, and automatically promote jealousy, competition, and self-important comparisons. If our partner doesn't agree with who we think we are, then we may retaliate by not providing what they want completely. Just notice right now if you're doing instinctive motives of greed, lust, or arrogance, how they might make you feel isolated. You might notice how hard it is to get a sense of your own sensations and feelings with instinctive motives. You may end up thinking that you need others to stabilize you emotionally or in your feelings. Now let's turn our attention to intellectual motives. Experience how the intellectual motives of personal dominion, personal achievement, and self-serving activity make us feel separate, encouraging us to keep a distance from people. You know, in this kind of environment, you're replaceable or expendable. Notice how hard it is to get a sense of your own emotions and thoughts and be true to yourself with intellectual motives. And this is because competition in proving ourselves smarter and more independent increases our polarization and conflicts. And finally, we're going to talk about how idealized motives of idealized trust, idealized unity, and idealized co-creation makes us feel insulated from everyone else. Consider how difficult it is to get a sense of your own feelings and emotions with idealized motives. We are only tortured by our need to prove our own goodness, only to find that this amplifies our personality desires and not our creative transpersonal desires. Intuitive motives promote unification, love, and wholeness. And so I want you to allow yourself to start seeing how your ability to affirm your own life energy, light energy, and love energy provides a foundation for relating to others creatively. And I'm going to ask you to come back to the group. Slowly stretch your arms and legs. And open your eyes when you're ready. Bring yourself to full alertness, where your natural aliveness sparkles, where your wisdom shines, where your awareness becomes focused. And as you come into an energetic connection with yourself, just rebalance your attention and direct some energy to the group, particularly in a common ground. And you can turn on your screens when you're ready. Okay, everyone, we're back. And any questions that people have? Are there any positive remembrances of partners that you had that really showed up for you and really reminded you of the sense of energetic abundance? Because that's where you have clarity about yourself. You have that sense of power to choose to operate with your full action, with any action necessary. In fact, even the action of doing nothing. And that's what we're trying to work with right now. We're trying to support people going beyond their conditioning, going beyond the comfort zone that they establish in relationships and they go back to every time. It's really easy to get into a tunnel vision in relationships and to define your actions, in terms of your needs. And then you become a need fulfillment program. Yes. I'm trying to pick
It was Alex.
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 Yeah.
Hey, good morning. Happy New Year.
Yes. There you are.
No one in the past, but someone I met recently came to mind during that visual imagery, and got a really great conversation yesterday for about 90 minutes, and there was a lot of what you described. And part of what I wrote down at the end of that was that I think I've got a sense of some of what she would like me to provide, and are getting to know each other. And I don't want to provide that completely, and I don't think that she does either. I feel like my felt sense was that we're both coming in, of course, with some programming, but also with this openness and kind of putting our hands on that little glass, the lightning globe, and feeling some connection and some excitement, but without the usual next steps that I would make. And I can't speak for her experience, but the things that I think I might know about her, I don't want to give all of that. I want to actually stay in a space where I'm open and just very new territory.
Right. So what you're talking about, Alex, is the place I like to suggest people occupy for a little bit of time. And why I really resonate with what you're saying is that if people can hold this space and keep it open, it gets clearer and clearer. And the needs get more obvious. And the ability or desire to meet those needs becomes more clear. It's not just, what can I do to get this relationship in bed, And it's also becomes, we start to let go of the programming that, certain things have to happen in a certain way for it to be the right relationship. And then you can create your own path and do the things that it really matters to you. Otherwise, you're in a kind of expectational spatial warp, and your perspectives and their perspectives may be different, and you're jumping back and forth trying to do them, and eventually the whole space gets closed down. And what you want is that creative connection on that higher level to be the thing that moves the relationship forward, not is lost in the first, month or 6 weeks or 2 or 3 months or even after 6 months.
Yeah, this feels the most fertile, the most potent place to play with that, and to be aware of my own leaning in and not wanting to close that loop that I'm very familiar with.
Yes. And the other thing too is you're sensing into and discussing usually a lot of the compatibility factors, and want to actually find where we're aligned and where we're not. And that helps form, the network of creative projects that we might do. And that gives us real feedback about how we link up and if it's sustainable.
Yeah. I'm feeling very grateful for both that process and this experience that I'm having in real time.
Beautiful. Thanks. Somebody else have something? Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, Katie.
Yeah, so I'm contemplating the bridge between personal dominion and universal dominion. And this is what it seems like to me, and I'd love for you to just reflect and add to this. It seems like when we're in personal dominion, we need like a space that's ours.
Yes.
But then we grow into like being stimulated by different spaces for our creativity.
Yep.
Kind of expanding from this space that's mine to like, what are the spaces that I can co-create with that activate me?
Right. They're resonant with me.
That are resonant with me, right? And then universal dominion, is that more like I can be anywhere and be creative because I'm a citizen of the universe?
Yes, it's the main distinction, but let me just add to that.
Uh-huh.
What universal dominion is, it's the ability to have mutual respect for every other person you interact with. So the objective is to not diminish others and not challenge their dignity, but increase their dignity in their own self of who they are. And so you would never try to pull people down. You're always trying to find a way to honor where they are. And even if it's a different place, you can still acknowledge it in a way that is not harmful. So you've learned to be harmless, you've learned to be present, and you've learned to be mutually respecting of everyone else. And so you're working as a creative being, not as a personality anymore. And so service is going to be the big thing that you're looking to connect up the dots. Where can I be a best service? Where can I make the biggest difference? And I'm not intimidated to go into any new location. Because what universal dominion is saying that we're all exist, and I work with the universe, and I'm a partner with the universe, and the people that are around me are the people that show up there wanting the same thing.
Right. And we're all a part in the existence and the movement of the universe. So
Right.
that
and sometimes some things don't work out and some things are not meant to be, but that's where we find out, is in universal dominion. We can't find out that what's aligned and what's not aligned unless we're operating from that space, because there's got to be a free choice of us, and the universe has to make a free choice about the process. So it's two things there that we're holding.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Who's next?
I think Jess is next.
Jesse.
Hi.
Hi, Jesse.
Hi. Just a quick clarification on your last comment. Does that mean if I'm, hanging out with someone, maybe they're not a close collaborator, to offer them the chance to grow, is it enough to just hold space for them? And, if you've embedded the ability in yourself to respect everyone equally and accept them, is that enough to grow?
Just accept their differences, accept the way they are, and love them the best of your ability. That no problem. Yeah. And also, I just want to say to you, we don't always know what the future has in store for us. So somebody that may not be aligned with us now, something could happen to them and they come into alignment later. So sometimes we don't know the purpose. We're waiting for the purpose to show up or the reason to show up to be connected. And we'll draw upon that when we do. will bring it in when it's important. And just like your child, you know what I'm saying? That you being a mother is a state of you had to give birth to the child, which is personal dominion, right? And then you see the child grow from you and grow with you, and you have to be there for that child and understand kind of what's going on that's different for you with the child. And that means you're holding space for the universal dominion part to happen. And you're learning that to trusting yourself to know how to navigate those waters. Okay? And finding the most easy flowing, beautiful way to make that happen. Okay? So I just explained it in another way. Any other things you want to comment on there, Jess?
No, thank you.
Okay, we have some connections.
Helps me. It was just about that thing. Oh, sorry. Oh.
Yeah, we have a little bit of connection difficulty with Australia right now. Okay. Well, we'll come back, Jess. I'll talk to you soon. Divinity?
Yeah, Katie's questions were kind of stimulating the question for me around universal dominion. So then would you say that for someone to truly be doing universal dominion, that they then can't be in subjectification and they need to have moved beyond idealization? Like,
Yep.
like, are you saying that universal dominion then is something that's like mid inner success and higher, or does it not line up? I mean,
Good point.
someone being universal dominion at like an earlier stage, but they're still working through, some of
Most
those.
of the time, those higher motives they begin in early inner success, and then they expand upward from there, just to let you know. And
so there's a range of someone being able to do that as they sort of like get
Yes,
free from idealization.
Yeah, but you can't be doing any defensive distortions if you're doing the full-on universal dominion, because you're denying your connection to the universe.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was saying is when you're doing a defensive distortion, you are not fully connected to the universe. You're trying to manipulate the universe for your own benefit, is what's going on there. Okay. So, other questions? Okay. So, one thing I was going to just say to people here is that, motives are an energetic force, and they come out negatively when we're fearful or when we have personal desires that are not aligned to who we are. And what that means is that some people, especially those that have been objectified and subjectified by other people who have lost their connection to themselves because they've been around people who treated them very poorly. You can even go to slaves, you know what I'm saying? They lose their sense of dignity. They lose their sense of individuality because they're treated as animals, So when you go down to that level, you really are not in touch with your motives anymore, because you're just trying to adapt to what other people are doing. So you're compromising yourself at a primary level, and it really impacts you to hold on to any of those lower level compromises, because if that is your identity, then you fight yourself when you start doing higher motives, because those inner assumptions can't really be held if you have higher motives. Like I just said, personal dominion is more about mutual self-respect. Well, personal, a mutual accomplishment is more about mutual self-esteem, and conscious participation is more about mutual self-love. So if you look at those top three levels, so it's life, light, and love are the three elements on the top that we're doing. And if we have things that are distracting us and unable to, we cannot release in ourselves, we end up becoming our own enemies, and we act out whenever people show us a vulnerability. So remember I said to you earlier, if people are doing lower motives, they're showing you their vulnerability. And the best way to address that is to show them their strength, show them what they could be doing, show them the next step up, and acknowledge them for the next step up, pay attention to the next step up, accept them on the next step up, because that's where they could go. And then all of a sudden they're motivating themselves to move up. Now, what is the force pulling them down? Their own beliefs and their own conditioning is keeping them from accepting that. So the more conditioning people have, the more they're trapped in a freeze situation, or the more they're trapped in an acting out situation where they keep doing the same thing to get some result that they don't really want, but they don't know what else to do. Does that make sense to people? Okay. So I just want to say, I'm really advocating that people become aware and conscious of how to meet people around them, so that they can sustain not only how the connection is, but they can uplift the connection. And it's not easy for people to be tuned into that when they're still developing their awareness. And so there is some learning curve stuff here that we want to do. But everybody has the ability to be conscious. And what keeps us from doing that is just how we've held on to our past attachments, positions, and projections. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so what we're going to just summarize right now is this is the class structure. And as you can see, there are 12 different titles here. And what our objective is to master our motives. And we're doing that through what the class is called Conscious Action Illustrates Motives. So if we take any conscious action, it's going to highlight what the possibilities are for us, and we can do any intervention we want to do at any time. We have a choice about those interventions, and we can either show up with people or we can ignore them, in which case they're going to continue to be trapped where they are. Now, I'm not asking you to go out and rescuing people. That's not helpful. I am asking you to look for the people that are on the fence, or they're looking to move forward, or they're looking for something better, and sense into that if they are willing to step into possibilities with you as a co-creative person to do those things. Otherwise, you're going to find obstacles with them, and they're not going to equally meet you, and you won't have equal partners, and that'll be a problem. So as you might notice here, this class is a whole litany of how we release and start to acknowledge, how we start to pay attention to, acknowledge, and accept others in different scenarios. And each step uncovers a process where we're withholding from ourselves. And when we uncover that, we start realizing that we have it to give. And if we have it to give, we have it to receive. And then that establishes a dialogue with people that we wouldn't have a dialogue with earlier. And the type of people we attract is better. People always ask me, well, why can't the people like me show up around me? Well, you got to be the person that you are. The more you are who you are, and the more you show up as you are, the more people will be attracted to you that are the same as you. And that's one of the reasons why we do this and we unpack it this way. Okay. Any questions about that? One of the things we're trying to get to at the end is talk about intent, autonomy, and engagement, and how that generates a freedom of choice for us about who do we invest in versus who we don't invest in. And the reason we want to find the best co-creative partners we can, but not every one of them is operating in our level of consciousness. So we have to do as much as we can with the people we have around us, especially in family situations and other circumstances where we can't get rid of the people. We might as well learn how to keep them from impacting us, or how to do the best with them that we can, given the circumstances they are. And so you just ask them to keep being the highest they could be. Maybe that's the one way of saying that. Okay, is there any questions about that? So anybody else have any questions about this? I have a few things in the back here about motives that you can read when you're ready, and if you're ready, and you can start looking at some of these pictures of different people and at different levels, and just start really noticing how starkly different each individual is, and how you can start just seeing their general motive energies very quickly if you start practicing. And one of the things we do in our classes, we go through each level and we really get you seeing one level, and then we move to the next one, get you seeing the next level. And so it allows you to kind of trust yourself, build some trust in each level so that you're not being overwhelmed or getting too many things at one time. In fact, I would say this presentation tonight is much more intellectual than a lot of the class, because there's so much to talk about this. But the class itself, the main goal of the class is to get you present with yourself, in a real way, so that you can respond in ways you choose. And then you can make your own decisions on how that works for you and how other people respond to you. And you can decide whether or not a person is up to keeping up with you or not. One of the big challenges is that some of you have people that are lagging far behind you, and that's a problem, and you want to see if elevating them with motives is going to help. That would be my suggestion. So anybody else have anything before we complete tonight?
I just had a question on the dates, because I actually fly on the 5th to the US. So I wouldn't be able to make that class.
Yeah. First of all, the classes are all by on the internet, like we're doing right now. And what we do, we have people all over the world doing these classes. And what we do is we process the class and we send it out in a day or two later. And so anybody that misses a class can keep up with the group. And that's how we keep people all tuned into the same process and the same level. And everybody gets exposed to the whole process. Okay.
One other question. I have a Vipassana retreat I was going to go to for 10 days in the middle. I don't know if it's good to actually have that in the middle of the class.
Well, in most classes, I would not say that would be a suggested practice. But in this one, I wouldn't say that you would have a huge difficulty keeping up, because the motives are, it's a progressive learning process. And once you get into the flow of it, you can pick it up pretty quickly, even if you have a small break. So I just will suggest that to you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Eric?
No, that's great. It's very informative. I like the framework. So it's a lot of new vocabulary for me, but
yes,
I enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, the reason we have a lot of vocabulary is I'm crazy. No, the real reason why we have a lot of vocabulary is that we have to establish a new framework for understanding consciousness. And unfortunately, we haven't developed it in our culture. And so that is the big obstacle a lot of people have initially. And then they figure out that we're not even trying to focus on the intellectual level of the classes. That's not the issue. We're focusing on the intuition. We're focusing on the straight knowing. We're focusing on unity thinking, which is higher levels of process and being present with people rather than trying to figure things out. If you have to figure something out, I think I've failed the situation. Because you should be able to know something fairly quick. Oh, this person is doing this. I see why they're doing that. Okay, we're going to move this direction. See, that's the kind of thing that would be helpful in your lives, not just, I'm going to put them on this chart, compare them to this person, do this. No, don't do any of that. That won't be as helpful as you just being present to the process and seeing the options and seeing how you could or you would respond. And then we tell you what an optimum response would be. And all of a sudden now you have a new paradigm for working on that level.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you learn a new language and it goes from intellectually thinking the translation between words to being intuitive at some point, and you just kind of see it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And the people who have done more than one class know that personally, because they don't even know how much they've gotten until they start using this on a really natural basis. Okay.
So I got one last thing to say before we wrap, Larry.
Sure.
So this has been a great session for me. Suzanne can only hang in for about an hour, but for those of you who are fairly new to this, or maybe only a little while, I've known Larry for, I figured out, 33 years. And to his last comment to the last person, he's been creating this new language and new definitions for as long as I've known Larry, and maybe before. And the clarity today is just extraordinary. How much you've taken some of these concepts I heard a long time ago, but the clarity is fantastic. And I still use the profiling mechanism, the energy, the way you call it today. I still use it every day. I still can read someone instantly, almost instantaneously. I can do a whole read, and how much it's helped me in business and personal life. It's extraordinary, and I'm really glad to have reconnected with you tonight.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see you again. And I'll see what we can do to connect up again.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be nice.
Great.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? By the way, we have Alex is here now. We should acknowledge her. That's her new name, and we're honoring Alex and appreciate her showing up in this area in the next couple of weeks, in case anybody wants to connect up with her when she's here. And we'll see you then. So anybody else?
There is a new 3-part blog on motives, if anybody's dying to move ahead.
Yes, and if they can't do the class, I whipped out those 3 blogs in about 4 days. So I have Ben out there who says he's going to help me edit it on there. So forgive there's any typos in there in the first thing, but I just wanted to get it out there right away.
It's only 27 pages. So
yeah, it's only 27 pages. Not a big thing, right?
It's not a big deal. There are graphics.
Yeah, a lot of graphics, so that helps. Hi, Angela. I didn't see you there.
Hi.
Oh.
My heart is beating when you're saying it's intentional, and
yes, you're the intentional person we're trying to do this class for.
Well, it sounds.
She froze.
She froze. That was perfect.
Yeah.
Indeed. Take them off. Let's
Okay.
get crafty, Barry.
Okay.
Is that right? Or
Yes.
not quite?
Yes, we're okay. Okay, everyone. I think we're complete for tonight, and so I'll look forward to seeing you in the class if you decide to do the class. If you don't, just know that there's a time and place for everything, And you can pick it up on terms of the stuff that we're putting up on Thinkific now. That's where we're moving our files to. Okay, everyone. Good night. I'll see you all in the future.
Good night.
Hi.
Good
Thanks for
night.
doing this.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night or good day to all the
Bye.
down under
Thank
people who are
you.
Y'all be
starting.
done.
Great showing from the down under people.
Yeah.